Hello, Rod Ovid here with another Take 5. Very happy to be here with you and to share these thoughts that we can grow together, walk together for the Lord, and accomplish some things in our lives. And that's what this passage is all about today. We find it in 2 Corinthians 10, 3 through 5. And just as a little background, something happens here. Paul is writing his second letter to the Corinthians, and in chapter 9 he's writing a great passage of thanksgiving for those that have been giving to the campaign and those that are so generous with their offerings and showing generosity, and it's a great passage. And then all of a sudden in chapter 10, he is like writing a different letter. Perhaps he put the pen down for a while and came back to it. There are some scholars that think that maybe chapter 10 starts this tearful letter that he talks about. Not sure. Scholars go back and forth on those things, but we do believe it's Paul's writing. It belongs in a canon, and it is very important. And I want to look at what he's talking about here. He's upset a little bit that there are these sophists, there are these people going around with their rhetoric and oratory, and they're speaking there in Corinth and other places and sounding very spiritual and high-minded, and some of them have infiltrated the church, and they're having their intellectual battles, so it seems. And with their logic, they're minimizing and marginalizing Christianity. And they're even marginalizing Paul, saying, his letters seem strong enough, but in person he's timid and weak. And, that's the kind of talk you get on a playground. It's that kind of put-down stuff behind your back. And Paul doesn't take too lightly to it. And he starts off by the meekness and gentleness of Christ I appeal to you. So he's saying, look, if I'm meek and gentle, it's because Christ was that way. I, Paul, who am timid when face-to-face with you, but bold when away, I beg you that when I come, I may not have to be as bold as I expect to be toward some people who think that we live by the standards of this world. Now that's Paul getting ready to blast someone. But what he says next is very important, and it's something we certainly need to hear today in the world in which we live. For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. So he throws it down here. He's put on his armor, and he's ready to fight. And this passage is very akin to what we find in the famous passage, the Armor of God passage in Ephesians 6. Greek sages sometimes describe their battles against false ideas as a war, in similar terms to Paul does here. And like those sages, Paul claims to be doing battle with false ideas. Arguments or speculations was a technical term for the rhetorical or philosophical reasoning. And the prisoners of war, in this extended metaphor, are human thoughts. So he says, look, we're going to fight your logizomai, is the word he uses. It looks like logic. It means to put together one's mind, to count, to occupy oneself with reckonings. Otherwise, we war against your supposed logic. And that's why that fits today. We have an entire system, not just in the U.S., but throughout the world, that wars against our basic principles of righteousness, of godly character, from everything from sexual attitudes to money attitudes to righteous attitudes. And they would say we're being silly. They would say that we're not practical. They would say, look, you're on your own, do what you want, just don't hurt anyone. And we've been hearing that for decades. And it's time we fight back. We take their supposed logic and we hold up the facts. It's not working. There's a way that seems right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death, it says in Proverbs 14:12. And in Proverbs 21:22, a wise man attacks the city of the mighty and pulls down the stronghold in which they trust. And Paul here says, we war. And that word Stratuomai is from the word stratego. Maybe you remember that game. Stratego, it was a strategic game about war. It's right from the Greek word stratego. It's a compound word. Stratia means army, and ago means to lead. So we are to lead our army into these intellectual battles, into these battles where they're being flippant about our attitudes, our righteousness, our moral stand, and we push back. We not only push back, we start tearing down the strongholds. We become aggressive. The Roman soldiers did not sit around and wait. They got right into the middle of the skirmish, and if they had to, they pulled down the walls and went at it. Casting down is from the Greek word kathereo. That too was a military term, and it literally meant the tearing down of the walls that were built during war. They went in there and said, look, we'll ramp over them, we'll tear them down, we're coming through, we're putting an end to this. And as believers, we need to understand that we are in a battle, and that our adversary is an experienced soldier and a strategist. He has fortifications everywhere, and when we come up to one, with God's help, we need to tear them down one by one and keep them away from us. Too many times we come against those fortifications, be it fear, lust, pride, and we try to battle it alone, only ending up hitting our head against a wall. We need to put on our armor and engage all of God's power and strength till the battle is won and the obstacle removed. But even then, we don't rest. We don't gloat over victory, because as soldiers, there'll be another skirmish right around the corner. There always is. It's why he says, don't be weary in well-doing. Well, maybe you say, I didn't sign up to be a soldier. I just want to be a Christian and live a good life and have a nice, comfortable life. And hey, I hope you can. Nothing wrong with being comfortable. But when the world attacks our moral fiber and our foundational truths, we must fight back. And there's many ways to do that. Get together with other Christians. Ask how it's going, how the war is going. Write letters, speak up, join the PTA, do all types of things. Let your voice be heard in kindness, but righteousness. And just see if God can't use you to make a difference. Because when we commit our lives to truth, when we commit our lives for standing up for what is right, what is godly, and we pray about it, and we ask God to help us, we get into the scriptures, we learn what we're talking about, then we certainly will have blessed days.